Some exercises seem to be really popular and everyone's doing them, but they're not always that effective. Now, don't get me wrong, there are things you can do with a 1 kilogram dumbbell, but biceps curls are pretty much a waste of time. If you want to get the best bang for your buck, you're better off doing things that are tried and tested and proven to work. Sometimes those really effective exercises take a while to learn and to master, but once you've got them, they really save you a lot of time and they give you good results. So if you're short of time, you're better off with a short routine that's highly effective than one that takes a long time that doesn't get you the results, even if everyone's doing it and even if it looks cool. Okay, let's get more academic. While some of my students are thriving in their new online environment, for most students this is not the ideal working conditions, and so they just can't go as fast as they normally would in the real school classroom. And if you're one of them, let's look at something that you're used to doing at home and you're used to doing well, and for most people that's studying. This is a great opportunity to bust some myths about studying and to look at what the research said to make sure that you hang on to all that hard-won knowledge that you've gained in your career. Research shows that most students use study techniques that they've used from a young age or that they get from watching their peers. Now, the problem with that is that if you're in college or high school, probably none of your peers is a trained professional teacher, and they probably haven't looked at the research and the literature into what makes for effective studying. And so you could be spending a lot of time doing things like rereading the textbook or highlighting pieces of information. And those are very well liked by students, but they don't produce significant improvements in exam results. So it's a bit like exercise. These pretty little weights are not going to do much for you compared to spending a session with a professional trainer who can show you how to do some of the basic exercises properly. And then that gives you a foundation upon which to base the core of every exercise routine that you do. Not the whole routine. You are going to do some more advanced exercises to liven things up. But if you're pressed for time and you've got 10-15 minutes in the day, if you just do the basics, you're going to achieve your goals. If you go into the gym as a newbie, then for the first week or two while you're learning all the new exercises, you're not going to be as confident as the cool kids with their pink weights. But later on, after you've put in the hours of exercise, your results are going to overtake the others. And suddenly you're the one who's much more confident and you're the one who's showing the example. The gains come after the repeated effort. Now, sometimes I have students who tell me about a particular technique. Oh, I did that, and it didn't work for me. This other thing that I do works better for me. But how do they know? And sometimes you really got to ask the question, how many exams have you studied for and passed? And who told you that this other technique is better? What's the source? What's the information? What's the research behind that? So I always think you shouldn't take advice from someone who hasn't already achieved that thing that you're trying to achieve yourself. Let's take a look at humble flashcards, spaced repetition system. So these are not high school flashcards. These are my son's, and he has to learn his multiplication tables. He already understands the thinking behind that. He's learnt the process of multiplication, otherwise this would be a meaningless exercise of rote learning for him, but he needs to get better at just knowing that 1 times 2 is 2. And when he gets that right, it goes to the back of the pile, because he doesn't need to see this every single time. But suppose he hesitates with 2 times 2, and eventually after a while gets the answer 4. Well, that's not the same as his very quick 1 times 2, so that goes somewhere towards the middle of the pile, so he sees it again fairly soon. And if 3 times 2 goes wrong for him and he needs to do that again, then that needs to come really close to the front, so he gets reminded of that and he can correct himself. And the cards are not the magic, it's the system of where you put the card that you've just looked at. Now, you can do it this way. I've had students get fantastic results with a shoebox full of flashcards. But of course, there are apps for that as well. And some of them have a really nice user interface. They also have some learning things like games. But again, you've got to think about, is it fun or is it effective? Hopefully it's both. But some of the best spaced repetition systems don't have a wonderful graphic user interface. They just work really, really well at figuring out what it is that you need to be studying at this particular moment. And that could be your staple exercise in your study program. But that's only addressing knowledge retrieval and understanding, and those are the foundation of a whole pyramid of thinking. So we need to start looking at the higher levels of thinking and some strategies that work effectively for those as well. So looking at different ways of thinking, if we start out on the foundation of Marzano's taxonomy, talking about comprehension and knowledge retrieval, if you don't understand the work or you can't remember it, you have to reteach yourself and you have to practice retrieving that information. Now, as soon as you start a study session by grabbing the notes and reading it, you kill that retrieval practice because you just read all the information. So you didn't train yourself to recall it and dig it out of memory wherever your brain has stored it. So it's vital that you get that first step right. But the other levels are really important to help you make sense of everything. And there are better tools for that than a spaced repetition system. So in the middle of the hierarchy, we've got knowledge utilization and analysis. And this is where your questions, your past paper questions, your questions in the textbook, and maybe things that you find related to your curriculum online, that can be really valuable. And I think for a lot of students, that's much more comfortable. We understand, it's very intuitive, that doing questions from the syllabus are going to help us to do well in the exam. But also with most curricula, those questions lead you to success in the actual subject, and it should take you further than just passing an exam. You should start to build that knowledge. But the very top level of Marzano's hierarchy is metacognition, which is thinking about the way that you think and study, which is exactly what this video is about. And also self-system thinking. And this is where you become the expert on the content knowledge for whatever it is that you're studying. Now, by expert, I don't mean you become a professor, but just in terms of the curriculum that you're following, you know pretty much everything there is to know at that level. And you should be able to demonstrate that by being able to suggest answers to problems in unfamiliar situations that you haven't studied based on the general principles of the topic. Or you are creating your own study materials. You're not rewriting the textbook because you don't have time, but maybe you've drawn up a concept map, or you've got your own study notes, and you're able to explain to other people exactly what's going on. If you're structuring your study program to include knowledge retrieval and analysis and your own representation of the knowledge, and you're thinking about how you're studying, you're well on your way to creating an effective study program. Thanks for watching, and remember, your efforts now will pay off, not only in increased exam scores, but also in greater confidence, and you'll be better equipped to succeed in the future.